Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, we are getting into that time period of the offseason where teams start to grow on you heading into the 2025 year. And as you kind of leave spring and you start putting together your post-spring top 25 rankings heading into the fall, I'm starting to stack these teams. And I'll start with this. Like, there are not many teams across the country that I have more confidence in than Notre Dame heading into 2025. And it's a combination of a bunch of different things. Like, number one, if CJ Carr hits and this passing attack, specifically downfield, takes a step, dude, this team can win a national championship. Hell, if you told me that CJ Carr is a very good quarterback for Notre Dame, I don't need him to be elite. I don't need him to win the Heisman. But if you told me he comes in and elevates this passing attack in 2025, they might be my pick to win the national championship in 2025 because around CJ Carr, it's just known commodities. You know the run game is going to be there. This pass catcher room is probably the most talented pass catcher room that Notre Dame has had in a very long time. Then you look at the defense, and I feel like a lot of the national media gets so concerned with some of the names that are off to the NFL. You start to kind of dive into this roster and say, there's a chance, and we'll get into this, there's a chance this Notre Dame defense gets better going into 2025. You know so much about this team, and if the quarterback play hits, this team's off to the races in 2025. Want to take a deep dive into this roster and talk about what excites me about Notre Dame heading into the 2025 year before we get into it. As always, to the Notre Dame fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. Most notably, if you got to yank the leash back on me a little bit, please do so, because I'm starting to buy in a big time way to this football team going into 2025. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I kind of led this one off with my elevator pitch on Notre Dame, how dangerous they can be in 2025. Is there anything I missed in terms of what this team can be going into the 2025 year?
Yeah, I don't know if you missed anything. I just think what I'd say is like what made Notre Dame really good for the past couple of years is still in place. The defense,
Yes.
you just trust what they've done in terms of
Yeah.
development. And I know they have some guys to replace, but I like what they did in the portal. I think like a guy like Jared Dawson, very slept on, and then just pure development. Nobody's been doing it like Notre Dame on the defensive side of the ball. Offense, your offensive line looks like it's going to be really good. And I think if it stays healthy, will be quite a bit better than what it was last year.
Yes. Yes.
And then you have one unknown X factor, let's say, and that's how good this wide receiver core can be. I think you're almost like underselling that. I think CJ Carr will be interesting. I think, again, he's going to have the pieces because I do think this Notre Dame wideout core is so much better than what it's been in the past couple of years. I look at Notre Dame, what they had that really worked was still going to be there, but they might be actually explosive on offense. And if they are that, yeah, you said it. Like, this is a national championship caliber team, not just like get there and get to the dance and like be a fun story, but a team
Yeah.
that can be a legit juggernaut.
Because you even go back to last year, it was a very good team. Made a run to the national championship. There was probably questions about, hey, do they have the ceiling to go beat Ohio State? Like, if Ohio State played their best football last year, was Notre Dame going to be good enough to beat Ohio State? I think the answer was probably not. You go into 2025, Notre Dame's best football could be the best in the country going
Well,
into the
they didn't
2025 year.
have the avenue to win where if a team got up on them and started to score,
That is
Notre
true.
Dame was easily going to be able to kind of keep
Yeah.
themselves in that game until they
Yeah.
found their footing. And eventually Notre Dame kind of did find their footing against Ohio State. They just kind of let it get away a little bit because they didn't really have that gear on offense where it's like, all right, if we got to match score for a quarter and a half or something, you can kind of do it. You just it wasn't Notre Dame's style. That wasn't what Riley Leonard could do in terms of pushing the ball down the field. I think CJ Carr with this wide receiver core, and especially if this offensive line's better in pass protection, can certainly be that type of unit where they can just win in more ways than probably the narrow version they had.
That kind of like Michigan was in 2023 at times. And like Michigan, it never got to that point where they were playing from behind in the game. Like, look, if Michigan got behind the Washington Huskies quickly in the first quarter, that could have been a different game in the national championship. Like Notre Dame felt kind of like that, where it's like you kind of had to win that way. And if it wasn't that way, might have been hard to get it done. It's not the thing you're saying about Notre Dame in 2025. Can we start with the offensive line? Because to me, that's kind of the driving factor in terms of my optimism. Number one, Dill, this offensive line was so young last year. You talk about a unit that drastically outperformed my expectations, especially with the injuries that they were dealing with. It was like a blessing in disguise in 2024 where you had to throw some of these young cats into the fire. Well, you're going to reap the rewards of that in 2025 because a lot of these guys are going into year two. To kind of sum up my confidence in the offensive line, Dill, you squeezed out Rocco Spindler and Sam Pendleton, like two guys who are going to be probably some of the better offensive linemen at the respective Power Four programs that they went to. They had to leave Notre Dame because they were not going to be able to start in the starting five going into 2025 pass protection. And look, I don't want to overshadow the run game because I think there's a blind confidence that the run game is going to be good. And I would agree with that. You got Jeremiah Love in the backfield along with a couple other difference makers in the running back room. The offensive line does need to take a step, though, because you do have to replace the legs of Riley Leonard. Now, you want to see the offensive line take that step in pass protection because if they do, the run might just be fine because you can push the ball down the field a little
Well,
bit.
that's what I was going to say. Like, what you need to replace maybe a little space that Riley Leonard could create running the ball. Like, what if you could just throw the ball deep and you could unlock the deeper third of the field, which Riley Leonard just didn't have? I mean, they didn't complete passes down the field. Riley Leonard, solid enough with balls probably within
intermediate
yards or so.
Yeah.
Really didn't get the ball down the field vertically, and that wasn't all Riley Leonard. That certainly had some part to do with until Greathouse started to emerge. Like, you didn't really have that wide receiver you felt particularly scared of working down the field. But you look at Malachi Fields, you look at Jaden Greathouse just gets better. Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert are kind of lurking in that too deep. I mean, that's how you create space for this Notre Dame offense. That's how you get that running game, again, to even take a step, even though you don't obviously have
the running.
I will say CJ Carr is not a bad athlete. I feel like people kind of sleep on him.
But let's not act like he's the athlete that Riley Leonard is in the run game.
No, he's not, but he's not Steve Angeli. He's a much better athlete than Steve Angeli.
Yes, very, very, very true. Where I would probably go is, yes, you don't have the running threat at quarterback like it was Riley Leonard, but because you have that deeper third passing attack, you're going to see less 7-8 man boxes. Like last year, it didn't matter that teams were loading the box because Notre Dame could run the football just about on anybody, which matters. Dill, you talk about separating teams from good to elite, like being able to run the football against teams like Georgia. That's what Notre Dame has going for them. You have that vertical passing attack, and I think that's huge. And again, if CJ Carr, he's got the pass catches around him. Dill, we took some heat on Twitter this weekend because our wide receiver duo rankings, we left out Jaden Greathouse and Malachi Fields. I understood the heat. Like Notre Dame fans, they had an honest gripe with that. That might be one of the more dynamic wide receiver duos that you see in the country. The offensive line takes a step in pass protection. CJ Carr is the quarterback that I think he is coming out of high school, capitalizing on the most talented wide receiver Notre Dame has had in a very long time. This is an offense that can take a step. Year two with Mike Denbrock is probably there's a lot of wind at the sails, man, in terms of why to believe in this team. Mike Denbrock's a dude going into year two. Everybody a little bit more comfortable in terms of what he wants to do. Probably can open up the playbook a little bit. Like there were certain things you probably didn't ask Riley Leonard to do with his arm that you can ask CJ Carr to do.
But again, it's not all CJ Carr because, like, again, I look at the wide receiver room a little bit more dynamic. I look at what this offensive line could possibly be in pass protection. I think it could take a big step because that was probably the one issue is you did feel like
agreed with that.
Certain really good defensive lines were able to get after them a little bit in the pass rush, but a lot of that, not a ton of continuity because of the injuries, and then a really young group. So that group gets better and gets more comfortable, especially as it pertains to pass pro because they ran. They're really good run blocking pretty much all year. Their pass pro, I think, can take a meaningful step forward. And again, you talk about unlocking what that offense can do and how much more you can kind of put on the quarterback's plate. It has something to do with everybody, not just CJ Carr's arm talent.
Agreed. And one of the things, not to linger on the offense here, but Charles Jagasaw playing guard this year, at least the projection. Like, does that not tell you about how good these tackles could be? Because I think Charles Jagusah is a damn good player. And if they're saying, hey, we can't fit you in at tackle, we're going to play at guard, tells you a little bit about what the tackle play could look like on the outside. Defense. And this is probably the hot take, right? I got up here and said I think Notre Dame's defense can be better in 2025. And I think a lot of people are looking at me and saying, you have to replace Al Golden. You have to replace guys like Xavier Botts and Benjamin Morrison going to the draft. Yes, that's fair. And I think my biggest concern is actually not replacing the NFL talent. I think Notre Dame has the roster to do that. The bigger is probably replacing Al Golden, who I thought was one of the best DCs in the country. It's the pass rush. That's where it starts for me. Notre Dame was elite in every statistical category when it came to playing defense, and they were pretty damn good against the passer too. Sacked the quarterback, 7.4% of the time? That was 28th in the country. That was good. It wasn't great. I think it can be great in 2025, especially when you play some of the best teams in the country. There's a couple of reasons I think this, most notably, Dill, you get some guys back. I mean, both Boubacar and Jordan were guys that were going to be some of the best pass rushers on that team, did not play, a good chunk, the majority, the back half of the season, certainly not in the playoffs. So you get two of your best pass rushers coming back in 2025. To me, the story is how good can Bryce Young be? There's a chance that Bryce Young emerges as like what Dylan Stewart did last year for South Carolina or what Colin Simmons did for Texas. Now, Bryce Young, just as, if not physically, more gifted than just about anybody in the country, was a little bit more raw as a football player, like had to be developed as a football player a little bit. Year two, Bryce Young could be one of the best pass rushers in the country. And if you get that with the combination of Boubacar and Jordan coming back, this could be one of the better pass rushing units in the country. That's how Notre Dame takes that step in 2025.
And you sync it up with a secondary that doesn't make mistakes. And you're getting a fair amount of that group back. Obviously, two cornerbacks who pretty much
awesome
the whole year, with Leonard Moore kind of filling in when Benjamin Morrison was out. You got three guys. You got three really good players back for sure. Schuler, Gray, Moore. All three, I think, were really, really good. You add a really experienced nickelback and Vontae Smith to kind of work in with that Jalen Sneed, Jaden Osbury role, I'd say.
Yep.
And then that one safety spot is probably the one you're looking at. And I think you set your floor really low with Jalen, or high with Jalen Strowman. But Luke Talich would be the guy if he kind of came in and took that job. I think I'd be more excited because you look at like raw traits and talent. He certainly has more of that, I think. Than
Wyoming kid. Come on. Now, I think you said it perfect. Like, if Luke Talich beats out Jalen Strowman for the other starting safety job, that tells me about Luke Talich. It didn't tell me about I know Jalen Strowman can play. There's plenty of film of him coming from Virginia Tech that he can play at a high level. Luke Talich goes out and beats him. It's a long, rangy defensive back that, look, I ain't going to put the Xavier Watts comp on it, like the ball hawk and safety, but like that's kind of what you're maybe hoping for.
And I think he does pair well with Schuler. I mean, Schuler's best play, I feel like, was against that Georgia team where he was in the box. Locking those tight ends up and playing really well. So him and Talich, I think, pair well, but that's where you get in. This secondary is going to be nails. I think you pretty much knew that coming in, given what they were going to return and given how well they developed in the back end. If you pair that up with a more dangerous pass rush, that's where that defense obviously really, really good last year. That's where you get like dangerous, like the way Michigan's defense in 23 or Georgia's defense in 21, where you had good secondary play with the defensive line that was really getting after teams.
You talk about Georgia early 2020s, you probably start with off-ball backers too. That's a unit. And it's only getting better. Like, Jalen Sneed's only getting better as a football player. Kingston Viliamu-Asai, I think, is going to take a massive step in year two. We kind of know what Drake Bowman is. Maybe a kid like Madden contributes as well. Again, you talk about pass rush. All those linebackers are guys that can get after the passer. And shout out Mike Mickens, because you're right. They just pumped these kids out to the NFL. Like, whatever they're doing in the back end of this Notre Dame defense, it's working because the development is the best in the country. It's one of those teams that this is probably how we'll end the episode. You know a lot about them. Like, they're very similar to Clemson. Like, absent the quarterback, like we got to see it from CJ Carr, but absent the quarterback, you know so much about this football team. There's so much about this football team that you believe in. Now, what excites me about CJ Carr is he adds a ceiling to Notre Dame that can allow Notre Dame, when they're playing their best football, to be one of, if not the best in the country. I don't think Notre Dame had that last year. It was a very, very solid football team that was extremely consistent in the playoffs, got to the national championships, and ran into a team that, quite frankly, you needed Ohio State to play bad football to beat. I think it doesn't matter this year for Notre Dame. They have a ceiling that's higher than what they had in the 2025 year. That's what excites me the most. Fire me up for this football team. I didn't think I'd have them as a top 5 team in the country going into 2025. They're comfortably in the top 5. And as we continue to work through this offseason, like Dill, I'm toying with them being like the number 1 team in the country. That's kind of where I'm at with Notre Dame. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I think we got an early game preview between Notre Dame and Miami going down this weekend, I believe. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.